Okay, welcome back, students. We have been working our way through Ruth Benedict's article, Anthropology and the Abnormal. What we've done so far is to go from packet pages 18 over to 21, and in my first talk I finished by discussing the Dobu Islanders. What I'm going to do now is to turn our attention to the Kwakiutls. They're a Native American group that was located on Vancouver Island. That's an island that borders both Canada and the United States. It's a beautiful place with lots of natural resources, and the Kwakiutls were at roughly the level of the Bronze Age in terms of technology, so more advanced than the Dobu Islanders, but still very traditional, archaic, and primitive technologically to North American and European cultures. Now, the Kwakiutls themselves have selected a trait that we would consider to be abnormal, and they have moved that trait to the center of their culture, made it a cornerstone. And that trait is megalomania, or as Benedict put it earlier, delusions of grandeur. Again, we can think of this as the belief that one is the only important being in the entire universe. The Kwakiutls, in their culture, encouraged a contest between all of the tribal members to see who was the most powerful, who was at the center of the universe. And it reached such a proportion that the Kwakiutls, who did believe in the Great Spirit, God, still believed that me, as an individual, is greater than God. Indeed, all of life, all of human experience is interpreted by the Kwakiutl as an insult contest. Whenever anything goes bad, whenever you have a bad day or bad fortune, it's not an accident. It's an insult from the entire universe, including the Great Spirit. It's an insult to you. You have been shamed. And that shame will stay with you for the rest of your life and destroy you unless you can mitigate it, unless you can neutralize it, invalidate it. The way that you do that is to then attack and kill someone else. So that if I have a bad day, something bad happens to me, I consider myself to be shamed and insulted. I find someone and I kill them, and that then takes away my shame. It takes away my sadness. I am no longer shamed. It doesn't matter if that person had anything to do with the bad luck that occurred to me, because in the Kwakiutl mindset, that other person that I've just killed is part of the universe as a whole that's against me. Again, the idea is it's me against the entire universe, including God. So that person over there that I've just killed is not an innocent bystander. They're part of the world that has insulted me. Now I have wiped away my shame, and I've proven myself as a powerful shaman. Okay. She gives an example of this on page 22. Benedict writes, "Among the Kwakiutl, it did not matter whether a relative had died in bed of disease or by the hand of an enemy. In either case, death was an affront to be wiped out by the death of another person. The fact that one had been caused to mourn was proof that one had been put upon. In other words, when I find myself mourning the death of somebody, what that means is I've been insulted, an affront from the universe. Now here's a story that illustrates it. A chief's sister and her daughter had gone up to Victoria, and either because they drank bad whiskey or because their boat capsized, they never came back. The chief called together his warriors. "Now I ask you, tribes, who shall wail?" he said. "Shall I do it, or shall another?" The spokesman answered, "Not you, chief. Let some of the other tribes." Immediately they set up the war pole to announce their intention of wiping out the injury and gathered a war party. They set out and found 7 men and 2 children asleep and killed them. Then they felt good when they arrived at Seba in the evening. In other words, the chief set out his warriors, "Go kill somebody to wipe out my shame." They found people asleep, including children asleep, and killed them. Did that make them feel terrible and guilty? No. It made them feel good because by Kwakiutl standards, what they've done was to erase the shame that would have been cast upon the chief. Now imagine in 1934 America, someone coming into the psychiatrist's office saying that they had just killed 7 adults and 2 people in their sleep because they had had a bad day. Something had happened that they considered to be an insult from the universe, so they've gone out and murdered 9 people, including 2 children. What would you and I say about that in our culture? We would have the strongest possible condemnation of that kind of behavior. What would we think about it? We would say that it was morally evil and psychologically insane. But in the Kwakiutl culture, it's sane and it's moral because you're following the standards of the tribe. You're meeting the tribal expectations. You are functioning perfectly well, and nobody needs to exclude you because you're fitting in. What does this mean then? That abnormality and normality cannot be considered a function of functionality or dysfunctionality. Rather, abnormality and normality are determined entirely by cultural prejudices. So the Kwakiutl who kills children in their sleep cannot be said to be sane or evil in an objective sense. We can only, Benedict argues, judge them according to the standards of their own culture. And in that case, they are functional and moral cornerstones of their cultural group. She says at the bottom of 20 in the last paragraph, this headhunting that takes place on the northwest coast, meaning Vancouver Island, after a death is no matter of blood revenge or of organized vengeance. There's no effort to tie up the subsequent killing with any responsibility on the part of the victim for the death of the person who is being mourned. In other words, you don't look for the actual perpetrator like you and I would. Everybody is the perpetrator. What you need to do is to go headhunting. You need to go and get somebody's head, cut it off, shrink it, put it on your belt to show this is what is done to people who cross me. What this shows then is that I'm the most important, powerful person in the universe. Do not cross me. Let me add some background here, and this is included in the Facts on the Kwakiutl Culture that's also in your textbook later in the course packet. That is information about the ceremony called the potlatch. A potlatch is a Kwakiutl ceremony in which a warrior invites all of the other warriors in the tribe to a meeting, but it's not a party in the sense that you and I would think of it. When you and I have a party, we invite our friends and we have fun. A potlatch is when you invite all of your enemies and you insult them so that you can rise above them and prove that you're the most important person in the universe. Here's how a potlatch goes. I announce that I'm having a potlatch and that warriors must come. Then, when the warriors are assembled in my lodge, I declare, you're all dogs. Now, in the Kwakiutl culture, dogs are not prized. They're not well thought of or loved like in our culture. Dogs are the lowest of the low. They're the lowest animal you can mention. So when I say, you're all a bunch of dogs, I am insulting them in the worst possible way. Then I prove that they're dogs. I say, look at all these blankets. I can burn all of these blankets and you cannot. So you're a bunch of dogs. Then I take my blankets and I throw them into a large furnace. That's the fireplace of my lodge. Well, the other warriors know exactly what's going to go on. What have they done? They've brought horse-drawn carts. And what's in their carts? Blankets. So they say, oh, we can burn that many blankets, and everybody throws their blankets in. Then the host says, well, I've got more blankets. You can't burn this many blankets, and he throws blankets in the fire. Then the guests go and get their blankets, and so on and so forth. It's like in poker when you meet and raise another gambler's bet. Well, when we run out of blankets, what do? Then the host says, you're all a bunch of dogs. I've got a canoe that I can hack apart. You can't destroy a canoe. And he takes an axe and he destroys a canoe. Well, guess what? Each of the guests on their horse-drawn cart has also brought a canoe. I can break a canoe too. So they all are meeting his bet. Then it goes to copper plates. These are power objects for shamans. A copper plate is not just a piece of metal. When it's polished, you can see your reflection in it, but for the Kwakiutls and most archaic people, reflections are an image of you in the next world. In other words, it's an image of your soul. So it's a highly powerful kind of shamanic tool. The host takes a copper plate and he rips it with his hands. It's thin like paper. He rips it with his hands. He says, you can't do that. Well, guess what the guests have brought? They've also brought copper plates. And so they start ripping copper plates, and it goes back and forth until all of the copper plates are gone. Then the host says, look, I can kill my slave. You can't kill a slave. You're all a bunch of dogs. So the host kills one of his slaves. These are prisoners of war they've taken from other tribes. But as you can anticipate now, the guests have all brought slaves as well, and they kill their slaves. It goes on until the host is the last man standing. You can think of the Kwakiutl culture as a determination of who is the last man standing, a determination of who is the most powerful shaman. Now, here is yet another wrinkle in the Kwakiutl culture. Everyone, when they gain a title or win a contest or achieve something in battle, gets a feather for their headdress. It's literally getting a feather for your bonnet. Okay, so in this culture, it's highly structured and hierarchical. There are lots of different levels. Nobody is on the same level, and your level, your social status, is determined by the number of feathers in your hat, not material wealth. We saw that when they were burning all of their possessions. It's not material wealth, it's the number of feathers in your war bonnet. But here's the catch. If I kill someone, I get their feathers. Now I get all of the titles and achievements and honors that they had, and my status goes way up. Well, you can imagine from this that a person with a lot of feathers has a bullseye on their back. They've got a target on their back. Everybody's going to try and kill them. A person who has no feathers or a small amount of feathers in their headdress is ignored. And so there is a certain virtue to not having any feathers in your bonnet. But the conclusion is this: what you and I would consider murder is not looked down upon. It's valued, it's approved. If I wait up in a tree with my bow and arrow and you come out of your hunting lodge and I shoot you and take your feathers, that's not murder. It's a shamanic act in which you were weaker than me, and now I've proved I'm the center of the universe. I'm the only important person in the universe. If someone like that were to be diagnosed in 1934 America, they would be considered to be horribly insane, criminally insane. Both tracks, criminal and insane, morally evil and insane. But in a Kwakiutl society, they've just raised their social standard. They've become more and more at the center of the tribe. I encourage you, if you're interested in the Kwakiutls, or as far as that goes, the Dobu Islanders, to investigate that further. Do research. The Native Americans are wonderful, interesting people. Everybody should try and identify a Native American group that they can learn about over their entire lives and then never stop learning. Native Americans are a wonderful culture, and Benedict had lived with several different Native American groups in her field research. But what we see here then is more evidence to her answer to those two original questions, that cultural standards cannot be considered absolute. They're only cultural prejudices. They're products of the culture. And secondly, normality and abnormality cannot be defined or determined in terms of functionality or dysfunctionality. This really concludes the first half of her piece. And so I'm going to stop my talk on this subject at this point, and we'll continue with the rest of the article in the next talk.